What is the nature of art? Certainly, art plays a role in every culture, and throughout time people have debated its value and tried to define what that role should be. Beginning in the 18th century, Western civilization experienced a series of cultural and political revolutions that rocked the status quo. A new era required a new way of looking at the world. Artists, musicians, and other intellectuals began to question and analyze the foundations on which their disciplines had been based. Which brings us back to our question, what is the nature of art? Where does art exist? Is art in the object, an artist's skill or technique, the stamp of approval from the art establishment? While many artists were wrestling with this question in the early 20th century, one work perhaps more than any other challenged the notion of what art was. While there is some controversy about the origins of this work, the consensus is that in 1917, Marcel Duchamp submitted to an exhibition hosted by the Society of Independent Artists a porcelain urinal, which Duchamp titled Fountain and signed Armut. The work was rejected even though the guidelines for the exhibition stated that any artwork by any artist who could pay the entrance fee would be accepted. The resulting controversy led to much discussion, which played out publicly in the art journal Blind Man. The upshot was that Duchamp's intent was to shift the focus of art from physical craft to the intellectual interpretation. In other words, art no longer existed in the object, but in the mind. Meanwhile, thinkers in other areas, especially philosophy, linguistics, anthropology, and psychology, were questioning the very fabric of human understanding. Exposed to some of these ideas from other fields, artists began to apply them to the question where and when artistic meaning was made. They created a kind of art that would eventually be known as conceptualism. These artists saw the idea behind the work as paramount, making process and product perfunctory. Language and text had been used in art before, but in this new conceptual work, its role was more semantic than graphic in nature. While there is often, but not always, physical form to these works, the interplay between text and images produced the artwork's meaning. Other artists questioned the action of the artist as producer of aesthetic content for consumption. Their work often brought audience members or the unsuspecting public into the works. Sometimes this art was designated to point out and challenge social and cultural issues. Other times, these artists used methods that directly disregarded artistic skill or gave instructions to others who made the work. In some cases, artists destroyed their own paintings and drawings to liberate themselves from the traditional role of the artist. Various conceptual artists deconstructed the notion of painting or sculpture to its most elemental properties, challenging prevailing art theory and criticism. Information became a formal element. Many conceptual artists wrote articles for scholarly journals or art magazines laying out their theories. Philosophical questions about how and what we know and how our actions are informed by this knowledge drove much of this work. While all artists have ideas, conceptual art's emphasis on the pure idea makes the work sometimes seem overly obscure and academic. Conceptual art has been mocked and disparaged by the public, art critics, and other artists as the self-indulgent ramblings of artists who possess no artistic talent. While conceptualism as a distinct movement has been eclipsed by other approaches, much contemporary art now includes multiple dimensions which a theoretical approach to art has made possible.